Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming today. And as mentioned in the title, I'll be talking today about wisdom from the Ramayana on life and relationships. And specifically, I'll talk about destiny and the question of what does destiny determine? So, does destiny determine our mistakes? Does destiny determine someone's misdeeds? That we could say people make misjudgments, for example. So, are misjudgments determined by factors beyond our control? To what extent? When we are trying to go through relationships, when suddenly storms come up in the relationships. So, to what extent are those storms just something which were destined? By destiny, broadly, we are using are things beyond our control. And to what extent are they in our control? So, the topic we are trying to discuss or we are trying to learn about today is that to what extent do we hold a person responsible when something goes wrong, and to what extent do we just let it go, understanding that it's destiny? We all commit mistakes. If somebody claims that they never commit a mistake, then maybe having a relationship with such a person is a mistake. Isn't it? So, or at least trusting that person is itself a mistake. Because overconfidence can be a big danger in life. So, broadly, I'll use the word mistakes in a generic sense. Now, dictionary can have many different meanings of these words, but I'm using misjudgments and misdeeds in two different senses. Misjudgment is more in terms of perception, and misdeed is more in terms of action. Now, mistakes are often used in a functional sense. Okay, I was supposed to turn left while driving and I turned right. That is a mistake. Now, sometimes these can be ethical. Something is ethically wrong to do. Now, turning right instead of turning left, that's just functionally wrong. So, generally, if you consider misdeeds, when we are using that word, there is an ethical aspect to it. That is a misdeed. So, suppose somebody made a spelling mistake in an exam. That's a mistake, that's not a misdeed. So, there are differences in these words. Now, the underlying common denominator is that we live in the world and then we interact with the world in two broad ways. One is we take in perceptions from the world. That is where we have the Gyan Indriyas. Gyan is the senses, Indriyas, Gyan is knowledge, the senses that give us knowledge. We take in information from there. And then we have Karmendriyas. So when we function in the world, we act in the world. Now, broadly, we can make mistakes in how we take in information, and we can make mistakes in how we act on that information. Now, when we make mistakes, there are some, if we consider them as misunderstandings. So, something can be an understandable misunderstanding. That means if somebody reads a particular word in a different way, say two words may be very similar, and while reading a word, we just miss out a particular letter. So sometimes we want to write there, and we write there. It often happens as autocomplete. So Once I was writing an article and I wrote, the soul is Satchitanand. Hmm. And then I was reading the article after writing it, and I was having my text to speech software reading it aloud, and it read it as the soul is Saturday Chitanand. So the term Sat was auto completed by it. That's a mistake. So if we look at incidents from the Ramayana, these are stories which involve the Supreme Lord and his intimate associates, and they can be seen at a transcendental level. At the same time, we can also see them at a practical or ethical level so that we can draw some lessons from them. So, I will focus on two incidents in the Ramayana where misunderstandings occur and then things degenerate thereafter. So, how are those dealt with? That's what we will try to analyze. So, in the Ramayana, when Sugriv is living with his brother Wali as his close friend, confidant, assistant, commander, second in charge, they are not just friends, they are not just brothers, they are friends, they are allies, and they work together as a formidable unit. And yet, things go wrong with them. They're both chasing a common enemy, a demon named Mayavi, who goes into a cave to escape from them. And Wali insists that I will go alone and that Sugriv should stay guard in case there is some circular way by which that demon may try to escape. And Wali goes inside and doesn't come for a long time. And then Sugriv hears blood, or sees blood coming out, and he hears the scream of the demon. He doesn't hear his brother's voice at all. As he waits and waits for his brother to make some sound, and no sound comes. With a sinking heart, he concludes that his brother has perished. And he thinks that, hey, if my brother is perished, then what should I do? If that demon is strong enough to take down my brother, it will be difficult for me to stop him. And if he kills me, our whole kingdom will be destroyed. Therefore, I need to stop him. And he gets a giant boulder, with great effort rolls it down and covers the cave. And he goes back to the kingdom, and while he's in the kingdom, he tells the citizens and the courtiers with a heavy heart what has transpired, that Wali is no more. The whole kingdom goes into mourning. Then the courtiers tell him that the kingdom cannot survive without a king. There are always hostile agents, and they will want to come and attack. So then what do you do at that time? So he said, we have to have a king. Wali's son is too young to be a king right now. So then he agrees to become the king. And then after some time, Wali comes. He is exhausted, disheveled, bloodied. And when he sees Sugriv sitting on the throne, he's infuriated. He had been chasing that demon deep inside the cave for a long time. And that's why he had got tired. So normally whenever he would kill someone, he would celebrate with huge roars of victory. But this time he wanted to conserve his energy. So he didn't speak anything. And when he came back and he found the boulder right over there, at that particular point, how did this boulder come? He tried to call out for Sugriv. Sugriv was not there at all. Then he had to push and push and push. It was extremely difficult after a huge amount of efforts, and trying out various things, he had finally managed to come out. And he came out and saw there was no sign of any scuffle. Had some other demon come and killed Sugriv? But there was no sign of any fight outside. So suspicion started growing within him. Did Sugriv actually trap me inside? Why would he do something like that? No. Did he want my kingdom? And then when he came in and saw Sugriv on the throne, his rage just knew no bounds, just charged upon Sugriv and started pounding him. Now Sugriv was initially elated to see that his brother was alive. But then his elation changed to fear and horror when he saw the anger in his brother's eyes. He understood that his brother was short-tempered and he tried to reason with him. But Wali had also just survived and he had almost given up hope that he might be able to come out of the cave, but somehow had managed to come out. And he just couldn't tolerate it. He just wanted to beat and bite. And Sugriv just decided there's no reasoning with his brother in this mood. He left. He ran away from there. Unfortunately, for Wali, Sugriv's running away was a further confirmation of his suspicion. If he were innocent, why would he run away? Now, if we consider this whole incident is tragic. After this, Wali's mind started working. Sugriv tried to kill me once. He may try to do it again. And what's there to stop him? If I don't stop him, he will do it again and maybe next time he'll succeed. Now the courtiers and his own wife Tara and others told him, oh, actually he misunderstood. Now he was so angry that he said he didn't misunderstand. He had a plot and he spun a story. And you people, instead of coming to check whether I had actually been killed, you believed his story. And you left your own king for dead. So, or rather than listening to others, he started criticizing them for being on Sugriv's side. And knowing his rage and knowing his power, slowly everyone fell silent. And then after that, Wali's mind started working more and more viciously. He said, I have to stop Sugriv. And the best way to stop Sugriv is to kill him. He tried to kill me and he didn't succeed. I was fortunate, but I have to teach him a lesson. And then he started chasing him to kill him. He started sending assassins. And Sugriv had to run for his life here, there and everywhere. And the more Sugriv eluded him, the more his anger grew. Sometimes when we try to do something and it doesn't work, sometimes it makes us think, maybe this is not meant to be. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I should be doing something else. But for him, his anger increased even more. And then he said, if I can't hurt Sugriv by killing him, I will hurt him by doing something else. And when Sugriv had run away, his wife had still been in the kingdom. So he said, I will take Sugriv's wife for myself. In relationships, there can be many misunderstandings. And sometimes there can be mistakes, sometimes there can be misdeeds also. But there are some misdeeds which are like crossing the Rubicon, crossing the Lakshman Rekha. After somebody goes beyond that, the relationships are very difficult to come back to normal. This was later when Sugriv told his story to Ram. Initially, Ram was sympathetic. It is just a terrible misunderstanding. But when he heard this particular point, he says, Wali deserves to be punished. Wali deserves to be killed for what he has done. Fortunately, there was finally a deathbed reconciliation between the two of them. So there is a heartwarming end. Wali apologizes for his presumptuousness and his harshness with his brother. And Sugriv is deeply grief struck at the death of his brother eventually. But still, it's a tragic story at one level. So now, there is destiny in our human affairs. Broadly speaking, destiny refers to the baggage of karma that we carry with us. See, when we come into our lives, this life when we come into, there is a certain baggage of destiny that we carry with us. Now, some of us, okay, let's put it this way. Some people will come with just a carry-on baggage, some people come with a lot of check-in baggage. That means some people are really slowed down by the baggage that they carry from the past. So all of us get like a first installment of our destiny at birth itself. We are born in a particular family, we have a particular complexion, we have a particular IQ level, we have a particular set of circumstances that shape a large part of our life. And then throughout our life, we get some installments of destiny. So, for example, if a pandemic occurred and there's a lockdown, so then our lives are thrown just completely into disarray. So that's something which is destiny. So factors beyond control that shape our life, those can be broadly called as destiny. Now, when these factors happen, they unfold in our life, what do they determine? Do they determine our situations? You can say yes, of course they determine our situations. But do they determine our actions in those situations also? This is a bit of a troubling question. If we say, so we can say reasonably that destiny, what it determines. Destiny does determine our situations. So it's like if we are driving a car, then the kind of traffic that we encounter, the kind of weather that we encounter are all determined by destiny. So now, does destiny determine our decisions also? That's the question. What do you think? It's a difficult question, isn't it? So, I was once giving this session and he says, so nobody was answering. So I asked, is this such a difficult question? He said, no, the answer is determined by destiny. So let me put it a little more carefully. Let me use the word actions rather than decisions, because when we use the word decision, it already involves a certain level of conscious contemplation. So our actions. Now we can say our actions themselves can be put in two broad categories. Our actions can be impulsive and they can be reflective. Or we can say Our actions can be unconscious, conscious, or I'm just giving a different flavor of words to get a sense of this. Our actions can be conscientious, or they can be spontaneous. Now, in our tradition, we often use the word spontaneous in a positive sense, that spontaneous devotion. It is not a devotion out of discipline. Spontaneous means something that just comes naturally, that flows naturally. So it's almost as if it is not something which we have done with conscious thought. So if we look back at the set of incidents that have happened over here in the story of Sugriv, the circumstance where Sugriv found himself outside the cave and he heard only the demons roaring or the demons screaming and the blood streaming out. Can we say that this situation was determined by destiny? Well, yes, we can say that. Now, immediately similarly, when Wali comes back to the kingdom, and then he sees that Sugriv is sitting on the throne, and that particular situation, can we say that was determined by destiny? Okay, possible. Now, in both these situations, their understandings were understandable. Both made misjudgments, but both are understandable misjudgments. So basically, sometimes our mistakes, they arise simply from our finiteness. We are finite beings and we can only know a certain amount of information about the situation. And based on the information that we know, we arrive at certain conclusions. I was in Rishikesh before I came here, a few months before I came here. I came on a North America tour and then I came to UK. So Rishikesh is traditionally known as the yoga capital of India, of the world actually. And now it has also become a tourist destination where it's at the foothills of the Himalayas, so people go for bungee jumping and hiking and stuff like that. Now, sometimes those of us who are not interested in something like that, we may think, okay, jumping out of a helicopter, jumping down a mountain or whatever, it's so dangerous. Why would somebody do something like this? Yes, all that is dangerous. And many of us may never do something like that. But there is a more dangerous form of jumping that we all are susceptible to. That is jumping to conclusions. So we all see certain situations and we jump to certain conclusions. And again, this is understandable. But it can be still terrible. So we could say, being put in a situation where one is likely to jump to a particular conclusion. One may also not just jump to the conclusion cognitively, but one may also react reflexively, react impulsively in a particular way, react instinctively in a particular way. That can also be said to be destined. Because if we go a little bit subtle, the soul is spiritual. Now, around the soul is the subtle body. That is, we can call it shorthand as the mind. Then there is the body. And beyond that, there is the world in which we live. So now all these three are material. The mind is subtle material, but still the mind is also material. And everything material is under the domain of karma. Okay. is the domain of karma, because the domain of destiny. Now, I'm using karma and destiny here interchangeably. What I mean is that the baggage of karma that we carry from the past has effects on us through the medium of destiny. So, in the Vedic tradition, there are said to be 3 different kinds of distresses. And these 3 distresses are associated with these 3 domains within which we exist. So, there are distresses which are called as, which come from the body mind machine. So actually there's one more in between which we will talk later. This is society. So the world can basically refer to something which is like the world refers to more like the natural elements. Society is the people, the human element within it, the conscious elements within it, which are living beings. So basically, if you consider the body-mind machine to be one unit, then from this we get the klesh that is called as adhyatmik. So this can be a source of distress. Society can be a source of distress is adhibhautik. The world can be a source of distress, that is adi-daivik. The world can be called as nature, earth, whatever you want to call it. So the point is, all this, the body and the mind, can be within the domain of karma. So it is possible that, say, some people from their past lives have a tendency to be short-tempered. All babies cry when they are small, but some babies cry as if they are going to bring the whole house down if they are not immediately attended to. So that is clearly an indication that maybe there is some scar associated with krodha, with anger. Might be a little more in that baby. Now all kids want toys, but some kids want to just hold on to every single toy that they have. They may never play with that toy, but as soon as some other kid wants a toy, no, absolutely not, this is my toy. So yeah, there's a little bit of possessive mentality, there might be a little greed over there. So we shouldn't condemn those children for that. But Krishna does say that many of the qualities that we have are abhijatasya. We are born with these qualities. So certain mental tendencies may also come by destiny. So some people are by nature very judgmental. That means what? They see something and they immediately arrive at certain judgments. Some people are a little bit more open. So within personality traits, how open someone is, how conclusive somebody wants to be. That's one of the traits which people vary over. So for some people, certainty is very important. What is the situation? It is like this, like this, like this. For some people, curiosity is important. Okay, let's try to explore. I don't need certainty. So this is just the way the mind functions. So we could say that sometimes even our impulsive actions could be destined. So I saw something and I yelled at this person. I saw something and I felt this person has cheated me, this person has betrayed me, this person was out to hurt me. Now the situation could be something different. So the impulsive actions can be said to be determined by destiny. But the difference between impulsive and reflective actions is that there is a significant amount of intelligence required in reflective actions. So when Sugriv misunderstood that Vali had been killed, or Vali misunderstood that Sugriv had tried to kill him, that was a false perception. Now, Sugriv's action in trying to block the cave was well intentioned. He wanted to protect the kingdom because he thought Vali is dead. Now, we could say even Vali is attacking Sugriv, that is understandable. Okay, he tried to trap me. But eventually, when Wali neglected everyone else's opinion, when he just stuck to his own understanding. Now that's where it's not just a reflexive action, it's a decision. So destiny may determine our situations. Destiny may determine also our inclinations. But destiny does not determine our decisions. So there are things which we decide to do and then we do it. That is on us. So if I get angry and yell at someone, that might be destined. That person did something, I was in a particular frame of mind at that time, and when that person did that, it just provoked me. Now, just because something is destined does not mean that that's automatically excused. But the point is, it's understandable. But if I hold on to that anger for a long time, and then I look for or wait for an opportunity to not just vent at that person, but to humiliate that person in public, maybe at the time when they would be most embarrassed or mortified, then that cannot be said to be destined. I was once trying to do a mediation between two people, and one of them was more reconciliatory than the other. And the first person said, I know you are angry with me. Can you tell me, what have I done to make you so angry? But the second person said, you exist. Now, if somebody has that attitude, then how can you reconcile at all? Isn't it? So, and the second person actually was not saying that either in a flippant mood or even in a very hateful mood. He was saying it that, just the way you laugh, just the sound of your voice, just the way you walk, it just grates on my nerves. Now, is this conscious? Is not conscious? Well, we all have a certain capacity to tolerate. Now, see, we may all have certain likes and dislikes, and we may not be able to control them. Even in relationships, some people we just like naturally. We want to spend some time with them. Some people we just don't like. Now, we really may not be able to legislate our likes and dislikes. But Krishna says that while raga dvesha vivastitau, that our attachments and aversions, they may be situated in our senses, they may be situated in our subtle body. But he says, tayor navashamagachet, don't come under their control. It's one thing to dislike someone, it's another thing that I like to dislike you. What that means is I actively cultivate that dislike. And that is something which cannot be said to be destined. So if I know that, okay, this person tends to get on my nerves, I tend to get a little snappy and short-tempered in the presence of this person, then it is for me to be more careful, so that while interacting with that person, I don't just go off the handle. So we could say, to take this towards a conclusion, I'll make 2 points in conclusion, that what is determined by destiny, we could say our situations may be determined by destiny. Then our inclinations may be determined by destiny. Okay. Situations possible, inclinations also possible. Now, we all have certain reactions. Now, those reactions may also be determined by destiny. Possibly, we could put it. So, it's one thing to have certain inclinations. I feel like snapping at you. They may say, okay, you may feel angry, but you can control your anger. But maybe in the heat of the moment I can't. So even our reactions may be determined by destiny. But then there are actions which we do are clearly decisions. They are we could say almost, so reactions can be said to be hot-headed. But decisions can often be cold-blooded. This is, for example, the difference between anger and hate. Anger is hot-headed. I just flew into a rage and I did something. But hate, a person who is angry generally is visibly angry. A person who is hateful may actually very carefully conceal their venom. And they may not at all be visibly angry. It's very cold-blooded and calculative. So, what we could put is that what is in the domain of destiny and what is outside the domain. So, if we put this on a spectrum, destined, not destined. That we could say situations, maybe not destined. Then inclinations, also not destined. Reactions, well, partly, but decisions, definitely they're not destined. So we could put this rather simply as black and white, but more on a spectrum. Now, what does this mean for all of us in our lives when we are facing different kinds of encounters with different people? In the Bhagavad Gita, in 12.15, Krishna states that Yasma no dvijate loko, loka no dvijate chaya, harsha marsha bhayo dvegair, mukto ya sachame priyaha. He says when two people interact with each other, what happens is we do something for them, they do something for us. Or sometimes we do something to them and they do something to us. So the nature of the world is that quite often what I do disturbs the other person, what the other person does disturbs me. And it's interesting that one of the characteristics of Kali Yuga is that upadrutaha, people are very disturbed. So now what Krishna is saying here is, now this is the normal way people function. That by the nature of life itself, the nature of the world itself, I will do something that will annoy you, irritate you, hurt you. You will do something that will annoy me, irritate me, hurt me. So when I am giving a class, I may give a class that is too long and that will annoy you. When I am giving a class or when I am giving a class, maybe some of you doze off, some of you don't have, some of you are distracted, some of you are bored. That may annoy me. So it's just natural. It happens. But what Krishna says is that a person who does not disturb others, so don't disturb others and don't be disturbed by others. And he says, if somebody can do this, such a person is dear to me. So, don't disturb others, don't be disturbed by others. Now, how do we do that? What does this mean in the context of our interactions with others, especially in the light of what we discussed about destiny? So, in general, misunderstandings are always possible in life. So, one of the ways to not disturb others and to not be disturbed by others is that when I am doing some actions, I try to take into account how others may perceive and how this may be understood or misunderstood. We don't live simply inside our own head without considering how others are likely to perceive it. Hmm? So we don't do misunderstandable actions. Or if we are doing those actions, then give some clarification in advance. Try to give clarification as much as possible. So on one side, from our side, when we say don't disturb, what that means is don't do misunderstandable actions. Or clarify, maybe clarify in advance when we are likely to do such actions. When our actions are to be misunderstood, then in advance, if we are going to do this, this is how people are likely to perceive this. Then let's be aware of it and let's prepare for it. So a certain amount of social awareness is important. A devotee is said to be daksha. We cannot be oblivious of other people in the name of being transcendental. So that's one side. And on the other side, if I have done some action that is misunderstandable, or the other person has done some action that is misunderstandable, then give others the benefit of the doubt. Okay, yeah, this is what I think it is, but maybe there is something more over here. Maybe let me find out. Let me not arrive at snap judgments. In many ways, this is a characteristic of Sattva Guna. When we function in our lives, in general, Sattvat Sanjayati Jnanam. One of the characteristics of Sattva Guna is Jnana. Now, the word Jnana has many different meanings. Jnana can mean knowledge. Jnana in the Bhagavad Gita has 6 different meanings, at least as far as I have seen. One of them is the process of acquiring knowledge. Jnana can refer to the result of that process in terms of what is it that we acquired. But Jnana can also refer to just the act of perception. So that means, at least at 3 level, Jnana can refer to the act of perception. Jnana can refer to the process of perception. And Jnana can refer to the content of perception. What it is that we are perceiving. Jnana can also refer to the product of perception. Jnana can refer to also the capacity or the ability for perception. So now, if you can have perception of all these different meanings, you are geniuses. I won't go into all that so much, but the point is the word jnana has different meanings. And Krishna says jnana refers to virtues. In the 13th chapter, he says certain set of qualities comprise jnana. What that means is, if we have those qualities, then we will be able to do the process of perception properly. So humility, Krishna says, is a component of knowledge. What that means is that if we have humility, we will be able to do perception properly. So how are we perceiving? What is it that we are perceiving? What is the result of the perception? So jnana has many different meanings in the Gita, but we don't need jnana of all the meanings of jnana right now. But what we are looking for here is that if we just understand that my understanding may not be right. So on one side, when we are interacting with others, we try to consider how others might see this. And when we see others doing something which is likely to disturb us, we say, okay, maybe I don't have a complete understanding of this. So these 2 factors, they can actually, if we cultivate these 2 things, so then we'll find out that we will be able to decrease misunderstandings substantially. So we could say how others perceive us, how others are likely to perceive us, that is sensitivity. How are my words, my actions likely to be seen by others? And giving others the benefit of the doubt is humility. So, humility is amanitvam, as Gita talks about. Sensitivity is various things. It's mardavam, anudvegakaram vakyam. So, to the extent, if we can have humility and sensitivity. Sensitivity means how are others perceiving me? I try to become more aware of that. Humility means how I am perceiving others. That may not be the full picture. Let me wait. Let me try to know. If we have this attitude, we'll find that many of the misunderstandings that arise, we can decrease them. We can even avoid them. So, when Sugriv first saw Ram coming in the forest, at that time, he had been so scarred by Vali either coming to kill him or Vali sending assassins to kill him. His first thought was, oh, these are people sent by Ram to kill me. And they were also a puzzling and disturbing sight. They were dressed like mendicants. They were wearing the robes of mendicants. But they were carrying bows and arrows. So who are these people? Sugriv was triggered by that. And he ran back to the top of the mountain where he was staying and he called out to Hanuman and Jambavan. He said, look, there's danger over here. And Jambavan said, what danger do you see over here? They just seem to be mendicants who are passing by. He said, no, can't you see they have bows and arrows? They are probably assassins to come to kill me. So Jambavan said, if they're assassins, they are doing a remarkably bad job of hiding their presence. Ram was in agony in separation from Sita, and he was in visible distress. He was crying in distress, and Lakshmana was consoling him. And then he said to Hanuman, okay, Hanuman said, I don't think there's anything wrong, but if you want, I can find out. So, okay, you just go there, but go in a different garb. So Hanuman took on the garb of a Brahmana and went. Now Sugriva could have tried to attack Ram. Oh, you have come as an assassin. Or he could have run away from there. But he didn't do that. Okay? Yes, give others the benefit of the doubt. Now, when Hanuman met Ram and then they introduced each other, Hanuman was delighted to see Ram. And when Ram told him that, I'm here to form an alliance with Sugriv, he was even more delighted. Yes, Sugriv is my master, I'll take him to you. So when Ram and Sugriv shared their stories, they both had very similar situations. There was a bond of empathy. Both of them were royalty who had been exiled. And then when Ram said, I will help you gain back your kingdom and you help me find Sita. So now Sugriv said, okay. He said, I know the strength of Vali. He is formidable. I know you are also a great prince, but I am not sure whether you can actually defeat Vali. So now, on hearing this, Lakshman became incensed. He says, do you know who Ram is? He says, Ram has killed Subhahu and Tataka and demons like that when he was just a small teenager. How single-handedly he destroyed the entire regiment at Janasthan. Now Sugriv heard this, but Ram could see he was not convinced. And then, now Ram didn't take offense over here. Why don't you trust me? Then he said, that demon Dundubi, who was a demon who had been killed by Vali, his carcass was lying as a skeleton nearby. So Vali said that. Sugriv said that Vali killed that demon and whirled his body round and round and hurled him far away. That's how his carcass has come over here now. And now it has become a skeleton. So Ram went there nonchalantly, just flickered the stone and it flew into the sky. And Sugriva said, yeah, that's impressive, but with all due respects. See, generally, whenever anybody uses the word with all due respect, what is going to be spoken afterward is not going to be very respectful. So he said, okay, but at that time, Sugriva had just been alive. His body had flesh in it. It was much heavier. The skeleton is much lighter. Then Ram took out an arrow and he shot the arrow, and there were 7 large tal trees. And normally, if somebody shoots an arrow at a wall, it just hits the wall and falls back. And now, for an arrow to penetrate through a tree is difficult. It can penetrate to flesh, but not through trees. Trees are hard in their trunk. But Ram's arrow not only penetrated through one tree, but second tree, third tree, all the 7 trees it penetrated. And after that, from there it went into the earth. And it went into the earth and it burrowed through the earth and came out and landed up in Ram's quiver again. Now when Sugriva saw this, Sugriva was watching, and as he was watching, his mouth was falling open and open. And by the time arrow came and fell into Ram's quiver, Sugriva fell on the ground. Dandavat pranam. He said, you will be my protector, you will be my savior. So Lord Ram was ready to go through the process of earning his trust. He did not get agitated. Okay, you have your scars. It takes time for you to develop trust. That's perfectly fine. So if our actions are to be misunderstood, then it was not exactly an action to be misunderstood. But the point here was that his credibility was not immediately established, accepted by Sugriva. Ram took that into account. So we don't agitate others, we don't let ourselves be agitated by others. If we do this, then whatever destiny is there in our lives, destiny may create some problems, but those problems can be minimized. Those problems needn't be exacerbated, at least. And especially when we are practicing bhakti, then how bhakti affects destiny is a great mystery. But at least at our accessible level, what we can understand is if we are practicing bhakti diligently, we will have greater humility, we'll have greater sensitivity, and thus we are less likely to do the actions that will make the situations worse, and thus we can protect ourselves. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. Our discussion today was about how much are relationships affected by destiny. When mistakes, misunderstandings happen, how much are they destined? So are misunderstandings, are they destined? That is a broad topic we're discussing. So I talked about how we discussed the Vali Sugriva story as a basis for our discussion. And broadly, we discussed how destiny determines. What all does it determine? Well, destiny is like the baggage of karma that we carry from our previous lives. And when we carry it in our life journey, it comes at different times in different ways. So it can come in installments. So when destiny comes, we discussed it like a spectrum. So what is most determined and what is least determined by destiny. So least determined or not determined at all. So we can say our situations are determined by destiny. Maybe our inclinations are also determined by destiny. Our reactions, they may be also determined by destiny. But still, we all make conscious decisions. So these are not determined by destiny. And to make better decisions, so we could say, if we focus on the reactions, then what happens is, in our interactions, I disturb you, you disturb me. So our reactions may be like that. But if we try to focus on cultivating decisions, that I will cultivate is like, at least in my relationship will try to cultivate uh, an armor, a shield. That armor has two parts. One is sensitivity. I will try to care more about how people perceive me. I'll try to become more alert to it. And the other is humility. That I will not presume that I understand the situation. I'll wait to clarify the situation. So, both of these can be developed or enhanced through the cultivation of sattva, and they can also be enhanced through the practice of bhakti. And by that, we all can find that our relationships, even if by destiny they are challenged, they won't crumble. Rather, we will recover and we can even strengthen the relationships through the challenges that may come due to destiny. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Are there any questions or comments?
In Sugriva's case, as you said, destiny creates certain situations, inclinations, and reactions. In Sugriva's case, all this happened for a certain decisions happened. He look at Ramayana, what was causing this kind of thing for Sugriva?
See, in general, what was causing means you're asking about some previous life incidents, or?
In previous incidents, what happened?
You see, generally speaking, the Puranas do talk about previous lives. But the core books in our tradition don't focus on previous lives much. Say, for example, when Arjuna has to fight against Bhishma and Drona and he just doesn't want to, and he turns to Krishna to make sense of the situation. Krishna doesn't tell him any special previous life story when Bhishma was this and you were this, and because of this you are in this situation now. So the Gita's approach to facing life's challenges is overall a very rational and pragmatic approach. Okay, this is the situation we are in. Let's make the best of the situation.
So the Gita teaching essence of it.
Yeah, so if we consider the Gita, it doesn't really try to explain the cause of the situation. It explains the best approach to adopt in the situation now that it is there. And that way, the Gita's message becomes more relevant for us, or more relevant beyond its specific time. Because if Krishna is not there to tell us some special previous life cause of a particular situation, then we would say that Krishna's message would have become irrelevant. But Krishna is giving broad principles. And that's how they are, it makes it very universal. Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the class. Very, very, very nice. Lots to learn. My question is around, you mentioned don't agitate others, and don't disturb others and don't get disturbed by others. So just in my case, especially being in Krishna consciousness, I've been trying to do that when I'm interacting with others, not to get disturbed. But sometimes you get disturbed by other people, and I'm trying to just stay calm and move forward. But sometimes my mind says, you're a walkover. Is someone just walking over your good intentions? And sometimes my wife says to me, you should stand up and say something. And she's more the let's disturb and let's have a fight. But yeah, I'm just wondering what the balance is, because you don't sometimes want to be a walkover. You, at the right time, you want to say something, especially when someone's doing something so wrong.
See, often we may study the Gita in isolation, where we look at the Gita's verses but don't look at the context. If the verse don't be disturbed by others, don't be agitated by others, literally meant let others do whatever they want, whatever they want, don't do anything about it. Then why is Krishna telling Arjuna to fight a war? Isn't it? Krishna tells Arjuna tolerate tam sitiksha swabharata. But Arjuna doesn't take it to mean, okay, the Kauravas have done so many atrocities towards me, let me tolerate it and just go on without fighting a war. So the point is, don't be disturbed. What does it mean? Yeah, that basically, at least in my understanding or the way I see it is, don't let emotions make our decisions. That now there are situations that are concerning. There are situations which call for action, and action has to be taken. But when we are disturbed, we are agitated, that time those emotions control us and they take our decisions for us. And those decisions are often not only unhealthy, they are often counterproductive in terms of making things worse, much, much worse. So sometimes action has to be taken. So tolerance does not mean to just tolerate anything and everything. Tolerance means to keep small things small so that we can focus on big things. It means that we need to have done our homework to determine first what are small things for me and what are big things for me. So, for example, in a class, sometimes somebody has not put their phone in silent. No offense. But if that has happened, then okay, it happens. Sometimes it has happened with me also. I am giving a class and I have not put my phone in silent. So that is something we should tolerate. But if somebody's phone is ringing and they're not even trying to silence it, just let it keep ringing. Now, even then, maybe I should not get angry and yell at that person. But still, I have to do something, isn't it? Can you please put the phone in silent? Can you, if you need to take the call, take the call. Right? So tolerance doesn't just mean letting whatever is happening, letting it happen. It's like, say, if a class is going on, what is the big thing? What is the small thing? The big thing is that the class flow should not be interrupted. The small thing is that if there are disturbances, they should not be escalated. So sometimes if a phone suddenly rings, and that's a little disturbance. But if the speaker gets irritated and the speaker yells at the person, or even the organizers yell at the person, then that is likely to vitiate the entire atmosphere of the talk. So keep a small thing small. But if the phone is constantly ringing and nobody is stopping it only, then nobody can focus on the class. Then it's no longer a small thing. Then it has become a big thing. So then we have to stop that. So tolerance means to keep small things small so that we can keep big things big. And actually in implementation, quite often we have to first keep big things big in our mind. And that's when we can keep small things small. So it's a process that goes both ways. In tolerating, we are tolerating small things by keeping them small. But before we can tolerate, we need to have determined first, what are the big things for me? So without that homework, tolerance can become passivity. And say tolerance in the face of intolerance can actually be impotence. That if somebody is out to kill me and I tolerate them, then basically I'll be killed. What is the point of that? Isn't it? So if somebody is intolerant, they can be in various ways. They're just not ready to change, they're not ready to reform, they're not ready to improve things. Then we have to make sure that the big things are not stopped. Okay? Yes, please.
Yeah, my question is that we were talking about destiny. When you said that destiny does not determine our decision, so we were discussing that we come of inherent qualities we develop from our birth. So if we talk about Vali, then he had that inherent quality of like short-temperedness. Okay. So due to which that was a blockage for him to understand what people are explaining him that might have happened. So is not his decision also determined by destiny in that case? With his destined, with he has that
Not
quality
really.
in him.
I mean, see, the purview of destiny, how far it goes, could be a complex philosophical question. But let's take a broad picture of it. So imagine there is some killings that have happened somewhere, and say the police don't know who's killed. So the police find some innocent person and take that person, arrest that person, put a gun in the hand of that person, and press the gun. And that person, that gun which is pressed by the police, by forcibly pressing the hand of the hand of the person holding the gun, the innocent person, and they shoot someone, and they frame and arrest that person. Now that person didn't shoot. In fact, the gun was shot against that person's will. We would consider this barbaric. We would consider this demoniac or outrageous. So, if we are held culpable for things that we are forced to do, then that's brutal, isn't it? So, now the law of karma does exist, which basically means that we are held responsible for our actions. So, if we are forced to do bad actions and then we are punished for doing those bad actions, then the whole law of karma itself becomes evil. And if God has made that karma, then God becomes evil. In fact, the denial of free will makes God into a devil. So we do have free will. Now the exact degree of free will may vary. So now we could look from one perspective and say, well, Ali is a king. So he has power and he can terrorize others and make them comply to his will. But along with the power comes responsibility. And a king is meant to consult others. A king is meant to be open to inputs from others. The decision may be the king's, but the king has to be open from inputs. So he could have given Sugriv the benefit of the doubt, at least to some extent. Sugriv had never tried anything like this before. They had been the best of friends. So maybe he could have called Sugriv, he could have confronted Sugriv and said, why did you do this? And at least Sugriv deserved that. He had been his friend and brother and ally for his life, for a lifetime. So we can't say that our tendencies, which come from our previous lives, wholly determine our decisions. Wholly determine all our actions. That's why I said our reactions may be determined by destiny. But not all our actions are simply reactions. There are many which are consciously thought decisions. And those, they are, the responsibility for them is on us. Okay? Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. Just a quick question. I got a little bit distracted in your last answer, so I'm going to try and catch what I wanted to ask. So we've been discussing that our karmic destiny determines our reactions and then some of our further thoughts that we may make decisions about. And the invitation is to develop the mood of sattva and through bhakti to make better decisions through reflection and through humility and being sensitive. So the question was, if we do that, do we then change, does something change in the further future destiny of our lives? Do we then create new pathways for our future? That was one question. And maybe in relation to that, you said, just as a throwaway...
Let's complete one if you don't mind.
But the throwaway that you just said was that bhakti has sort of mystical effects on destiny. And I just wondered again, does that feed into just anything that you can share?
Now, we often hear this philosophical point that destiny is fixed. Now, what does that actually mean? So, we say that sometimes just as happiness comes on its own, just as distress comes on its own, happiness will also come on its own. We have that kind of verses are there in the Bhagavatam. So the destined distress will come, the destined happiness will also come. Well, yes, definitely, that's one part of it. But then we also say that if somebody, yehi samsparsha jab hoga, dukha yona evati. If somebody is engaging in sense indulgence unrestrictedly, without considering dharma, that leads to distress. So now, if an alcoholic, if a person drinks way too much alcohol and the person gets a splitting headache, a terrible hangover, was that destined? Well, is it possible for us to make our life more miserable than what it was destined to be?
Yeah.
It's definitely possible, isn't it? Our bad decisions can do that. Now, if it is possible for us to make our life more miserable, then is it not possible for us to make our life less miserable? Is it not possible to make our life happier? So, when we talk about destiny being fixed, these are very subtle concepts. So, what my understanding is say, suppose we can say the amount of money a person is going to earn is destined. Again, amount you may say, is it in Indian rupees or pounds or dollars? That's not the point over here. Just take it as a concept. The amount of money a person may earn may be destined. But if a person has, through their life, cultivated materialism and greed, then whatever amount of money they earn, they will be very dissatisfied with it. On the other hand, if a person has cultivated spirituality or even sattva and cultivated gratitude, then even if the amount of money they have earned may remain fixed, still actually they will be less unhappy, they will be more content. So our actions in this life do determine the quality of our life. So is that changing destiny? Well, yes and no. What it means is destiny in terms of the baggage of karma that we carry from our previous life is fixed. But destiny in terms of, but the situations that come in our life are an unpredictable combination or unpredictable, indeterminate combination of past actions and present actions. So, for example, somebody we all got caught in the pandemic. Now, somebody could have just before the pandemic started a small business and invested a lot in that, and they could be wiped out by it. Somebody just before they started a pandemic sold a small business and got into an IT job, and they could just do their job from home without any difficulty, and they earned a lot of money. So now these small decisions, they make a significant difference. So I think in general, whenever we are focusing on the principle of karma and on destiny, see, the basic understanding of karma or the basic implication of karma is that our actions matter, even when they don't seem to. Sometimes I may be working very hard and still I may not be getting any result. And I may start thinking that, life is rotten, destiny is rotten, the world is rotten, nothing that I do works. No, maybe that's the time when we are going through a phase of negative karma. So our actions are not bearing some results. But they will be a result when the negative karma gets over. So it's not so much going into the past and this is determined or that is determined or that is not determined. Our actions matter. Even how has our destiny been fixed? It is by our past actions only, isn't it? So our actions matter. Therefore, choose as wisely as possible. So exactly, if we cultivate humility and sensitivity, how many of future complexities in our relationships we may be able to avoid or minimize? We will not be able to determine that. Sometimes despite our humility and sensitivity, some people might just become our enemies. And we can say maybe it was destined, beyond our control. So now as far as bhakti is concerned, there are certain aspects which bhakti does not change. Say if somebody is born with a particular complexion, it's not that in chant Hare Krishna the complexion is going to change. Isn't it? Maybe they become more cheerful and they look brighter, and because they look brighter, they look better. So maybe their appearance changes, but their complexion is not going to change. They have a particular height, that height is not going to change. Maybe their weight will change. But there are certain things may not change. But the point is that there is an internal change that bhakti brings about, and there is an external change in terms of changing of the situations. Like sometimes we are going to face some troubles, and by Krishna's arrangement, through the potency of bhakti, those situations may not come in our life. Now, how much that is going to happen, we don't know that. Because first of all, we don't know it's how much is our karma baggage, and then how much is removed by Krishna. We don't know that. So focusing too much on that aspect of destiny is not very helpful. But focusing on the aspect that bhakti and the practice of bhakti can help us cultivate virtue, and thereby help us to face the life's problems better. So that is something which we can leverage. I came in here, I saw in the Avanti Court School that devotion, excellence, virtue, devotion. 3 things were written over there. So now, in general, if we consider excellence refers to the skills that we develop. Now, to some extent, when problems come in our life, if we are skilled, then that helps us face problems. To some extent, if we have virtues, that helps us to face problems. So that means, say, if somebody loses money or somebody faces a recession. Now, if they are skilled, they are excellent, they can find some other job. Maybe they have in advance only planned something else, they prepare for it. Somebody has virtue, then maybe, okay, during this time I have to live with a lower budget, I can live with that. So, in general, excellence and virtue can both help us face life's problems better. And to some extent, if you develop devotion, then devotion, it has some mystical element in which it can remove the situations itself. But more importantly, if devotion helps us to face problems better. So generally, we can say skills and values. So excellence is more into the skills. So when we have to face problems, the skills that we have, it can help us to face problems. The values that we have, it can help us to face problems. Now devotion can actually help us develop both. If I cultivate a devotion, then I have a calmer mind, I have a more grateful heart, then that virtue helps me to stay better situated. If I have a calmer mind, whatever abilities I have, I can perform better with those abilities, I can tap those abilities better, so that can also help me. Okay. Thank you. So, any last question before we stop? Yes, please.
Just related to what you've covered today, you also speak about impulsive self versus reflective self, and then under reflective self, you said there's intelligence in the soul. So how does the soul correspond to the reflective self? Is it related to what you've covered today as well?
Okay, so I've earlier spoken about how the reflective self, the part of us which reflects, that's associated with the intelligence in the soul. The exact way the soul acts in the material world is complex. At the same time, the soul is a part of God. In that sense, godly characteristics are present in the soul. Now, when a person is acting virtuously, to what extent is that because of their punya, because of the past good activities that they have done, and those impressions are there within them, and because of that, that person is acting virtuously. And to what extent is it? Because the natural godliness of the soul is manifesting. This is difficult to determine. So now, in the broad Vedic philosophy, there are two different conceptions of virtue itself. Like, is virtue a positive samskar on the mind? Or, like, vice is a samskar, lust is an impression, greed is an impression on the mind. So, is gratitude, is politeness, is humility also an impression on the mind? That's one conception of virtue. The other conception of virtue is that actually virtue is simply the result of the clearing of the mind of all impressions. So the soul is virtuous, and when the soul is no longer having any conditioning surrounding it in the mind, then virtue is manifesting. So let me depict this in some ways. See, the soul is here. Around the soul, the mind is there. Now, let's keep it only this much. So, one conception is that there are dark impressions within the soul, and there are good, bright impressions in the soul. Not within the soul, around the soul, in the mind. So, now, this one idea is that, say, this is vice. Virtue arises from the good impressions in the mind, and vice arises from the bad impressions in the mind. Now, the other idea is that if we consider the soul to be here and the mind to be here around it, so now, to the extent, so if there are some impressions which are negative over here, so what comes out from here is vice, and what comes from here is virtue. So if there are no impressions obstructing the purity of the soul, then virtue naturally manifests. So now there is a lot of philosophical discussion on this. The overall understanding is virtue is both. Virtue can be due to the samskaras on a person, because you can even say that somebody will be completely atheistic and they can also have some virtues. They may have no devotion, but still they may be polite, they may be kind, they may be even humble or grateful. You may say they don't have any of these virtues ultimately, and that is true. But in the functional sense, they may manifest those virtues. So Krishna, when he is describing the divine and demoniac natures, he does not mention bhakti as a characteristic of the divine nature. He gives a list of virtues. So, in a person's case, when they are manifesting some virtue, where is it coming from? It could be from their mind's positive impressions. It could be coming from the awakening of the soul. So, it is best to not get too caught in this kind of analysis. Like one devotee may be having some unhealthy habits, and they chant Hare Krishna and they just give up that unhealthy habit. Another devotee chants and still that unhealthy habit continues for years. Now, is it that the first devotee is so sincere and serious in their bhakti and that's why they are able to give up that habit? Is the other devotee so insincere and unserious in their bhakti, that's why they are not able to give up the habit? Maybe, maybe not. Say, if we consider like today's Ekadashi, some of us may be fasting on Ekadashi. Now, some people are able to fast very easily, some people are not able to fast very easily. So, if somebody fasts very nicely, so is that vairagya a result of their bhakti or is it a result of their punya? It could be either way, isn't it? Vairagya can result from bhakti. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayatya Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chedahitukam. But vairagya is also one of the opulences of Krishna. And all the 6 opulences of Krishna come to a jiva based on their purva punya. If somebody is very beautiful, somebody is very wealthy, that is not a result of their bhakti, that is a result of their punya. So just as the other opulences can come because of punya, So even Vairagya can come because of Punya. So in general, humility would mean that I don't ascribe negativity to the other person. So if somebody is not able to develop some virtue, instead of saying, this person is not sincerely practicing bhakti, it could be that the impressions associated with the opposite vice are very deep rooted in them. And let them continue the practice of bhakti. And eventually the virtues will manifest. So, did I address your question or did I go in a different direction?
It was also like with journaling, like you give that model.
So, okay, so going back to the point that, so when I was associating the higher self with the intelligence or the soul, so what I was saying is the higher self is the source of our virtues, it is the source of our reflectiveness. The general reflectiveness is associated with virtues. So, where the reflectiveness is coming from? Is it coming from the buddhi? It's coming from the atma. The buddhi is developed by punya. If the atma is awakened, that is bhakti. That is adhyatma. So it could be coming from either of them. That's why I put the higher self together as intelligence and the higher and the soul. Okay? Okay, I waited a detour to answer that question, but I think that was required over here. Okay? So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.